The Prime Minister was asked today about the efforts to get those Canadians and their families out of Gaza. Justin Trudeau was speaking in Washington, where he was attending a summit on economic prosperity in the Americas. Earlier, he posed for a group photo with U.S. President Joe Biden and other leaders. Biden hosted the inaugural event for the leaders of a dozen countries across the Americas. After those discussions wrapped, the Prime Minister met with reporters at the Canadian Embassy. And the CBC's Olivia Stefanovich is monitoring developments in Ottawa and joins us now live. And of course, so many of the questions were around the war between Israel and Hamas. What did Trudeau have to say about the fact that Canadians are still unable to get out of Gaza? They may get out on Sunday.
Well, Andrew, this is the big question facing the Prime Minister, and he wasn't able to give a clear answer. It is possible that Canadians might be able to start moving across the Rafah border crossing on Sunday or Monday, Andrew, but it really remains to be seen. Now, part of the complication here is that this is largely out of Canada's hands. The decision about who gets to go, who gets to be on these approved lists by the Gaza Border Crossing Authority that determines who gets to go across the Rafah border crossing, that's controlled by Israel, Egypt, and to some extent Qatar, which is in touch with Hamas. Now, Canadian officials are in touch with those three countries, working all the channels they can to make sure that Canadians get on this list. But so far, Andrew, only one Canadian citizen has been able to cross the Rafah border crossing, and this is a Canadian citizen who was not even registered with Global Affairs Canada. This is somebody who worked for an international organization, and their departure from Gaza actually came to a surprise to the federal government. Trudeau, though, says he is hopeful that Canadians will be able to leave Gaza soon. Let's take a listen to what he had to say earlier during his press conference.
On the issue of Canadians and their families in Gaza, we are encouraged by the assurances that Minister Joly received from Israel and from Egypt that Canadians and their families will be able to leave Gaza in the coming days.
Now, Andrew, Canadian sources say that, the Canadians might be able to start leaving on Sunday or Monday from Gaza. There are 450 to 500 Canadians who are currently trapped in the Gaza Strip. They contain not only Canadian citizens, but permanent residents, their spouses, and other family members, children even. And I've been speaking to a source who tells me that the situation is more difficult than Canadians even expected at the Rafah border crossing, that things are moving slower than the Canadians had hoped for. And they also say that the officials who are on the ground controlling this process are not making things easier for Canadians or speeding up the process as much as Canada would like.
And Olivia, the Prime Minister was also asked about calls for a ceasefire and why he is not among those seeking one. He has asked for humanitarian pauses, but not a ceasefire. Maybe tell us about the difference and what he had to say about that.
Yes, and Trudeau is under pressure from not only the federal NDP here and Palestinian Canadians who are calling for the government to push for a ceasefire, but also his own Liberal caucus, because there are several Liberal MPs who are asking the government to support this. So far, Trudeau has not gone there. He again called for there to be a humanitarian pause, which is really just a pause. That's what it is, Andrew, to the hostilities, which would allow time for what Trudeau wants to see, which is the hostages, Israeli hostages, to be released, for aid to get into to Gaza to help Palestinians, and for civilians to be protected, for Palestinians, and also the Prime Minister wants to see people in the West Bank rather, protected as well. And the Prime Minister was asked directly about this issue, whether he's going to call for a ceasefire today. Let's take a listen to how he answered that question.
It's hard to watch the news every night and see the impacts on civilians, including children, and not want it to stop. We need to see a cease. We need to see a humanitarian pause so we can flow. We need to see ceasing of the levels of violence that we're seeing. We need to see civilians protected. We need to see a humanitarian pause to get aid in, to get Canadians out, to get vulnerable people out, to get hostages released. These are the things that the people around the world are looking for.
Andrew Trudeau was also asked whether Israel is any closer to agreeing to a humanitarian pause. Trudeau says he can't speak for Israel's decisions, but that Canada and the U.S., along with other countries, will continue to push for a humanitarian pause. U.S. President Joe Biden called for a humanitarian pause for the first time yesterday.